Hello there, once again. Lyndall Fraker here with Marshfield Old School Times, and we've got a local guy here with us today that a lot of you know, Jody Tall Guy Cottengim.
Oh boy,
Gin or Gin?
Gim,
Gim. Yeah,
Gim, hard G.
I knew that, and it comes out a little bit maybe like Eli Whitney or something, but it's Gim.
It is cotton gim. It is cotton gim. It's a. I just get close.
Yeah.
Close.
Okay, Jody. Well, we really appreciate you coming in today. We're going to have some fun today. I assure you that. Marshfield Reunion Fest 1 week from tonight, and Jody's going to be playing the drums for Papa Green Shoes, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. Been raining a little bit this afternoon, but it's going to probably turn off hot again, and everybody can get out and enjoy the weather. But right now, while it's a little bit damp, it's a good time to be watching Marshfield Old School Times.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. So we appreciate you coming in.
Well, thank you.
Jody's an interesting guy, and we're going to hear all about that. We kind of like to start at the beginning, when you discovered America.
Fire away. Well,
yeah. So let's just do that. Let's get this thing going.
Well, that'd be fine. I don't know how far you want to go back, but I'm just a kid from Springfield, Missouri, actually. I was born in Springfield. Now, a lot of times you hear the term military brat. Well, I was a musician brat because my dad was a professional songwriter, and my mom was an entertainment photographer. And we spent, all the way up until I was in the 5th grade, we pretty much were on the road. Because back in the 70s, there was a musical circuit that would go from like motel to motel to motel to motel. Kind of like people do residencies in Vegas.
Yeah.
But back in the 70s, it was you played at Howard Johnson's for a couple weeks, and then you played at, Ramada for a couple weeks, and so on and so on.
Now, how far out did you go?
Oh, all over the United States.
Oh, really?
All over.
All over.
I've lived as a child, we lived up north in Wisconsin in a little bitty town called Caryville that was right outside of Eau Claire. We've lived in Nashville. Like, we lived in Nashville before Branson was Branson. My dad thought that Nashville would be the place to be because that's where Willie and Waylon and Chris Christopherson and Johnny Paycheck and all the original outlaw and singer-songwriters were at. So my dad's goal was always to play music for a living, but he also was, since he was a songwriter and not just a person that was able to play other people's songs, he, it was always the carrot at the end that you're running after is always that who would take one of these songs and make it something of their own.
Yeah.
And he chased that dream all the way through the end, and he would always write with that kind of mentality that, this one would fit this person, or this one would probably fit this person. So as a little kid, I learned a lot about, I figured it out older. I think that's why I can pretty much talk to about anybody, because if you're going to 9 different elementary schools before 5th grade,
wow,
you get to learn a lot of teachers.
Sure.
And honestly, you end up playing a lot of games like foosball and pinball and shuffleboard.
Entertain yourself.
The stuff that was inside the rec center of the pool.
Yeah.
Because there's always a swimming pool at all these places.
You probably learned to swim.
He threw me in and said, "Come here," and I did.
But was your home base Springfield?
Yeah. I was born in Cox North in Springfield.
Yeah.
But we took off. Always had a home on Camelot Court, over on the what's now the west side of town. But, always had that place, and we came back to that place. And I started going to, I settled down for school, like I said, in 5th grade.
Yeah.
And so I went to Ed V. Williams in Springfield, and then went to Reed Junior High, and I went to Hillcrest High School.
Hillcrest. Now, how many brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, and that's it.
That's it.
His name is Stoney Lee.
Stoney, yeah.
And he's also in the Papa Green Shoes band. He's been in all the best bands that we've ever been in. Growing up, your dad doing that, and then once we became old enough to actually play instruments, and then once we became old enough to play instruments and be under his care, not in full-blown whiskey-drinking honky-tonks.
Right, yeah.
None of that, really. None of that urban cowboy kind of thing. But more like if it was at an Elks Lodge or if it was an outdoor event of some sort. For instance, like the Reunion Fest.
Yeah.
Well, then he would take us, and we were the Cottengim Band. Well, actually, we were the Good Guys for a while, because Guy is a name in our family. And so then we turned into the Cottengim Band, and that was probably late 80s, early 90s. And it was my dad and my brother and I. And
Just the three of you?
Yeah. Talk about solid. And that's all there really is because it's my mom, my dad, me, and my brother.
What was your dad's name?
Jimmy Guy. Yeah. He was Jimmy Guy, and he was known for being a one-man band. He would sit behind a B3 organ, which is, if you don't know what a B3 is, it's what Greg Allman sat behind, or it's that beautiful tone that you get in all the southern black gospel churches with Leslie's spinning, just howling at you. But he would sit behind a B3 and play Fender Rhodes on top. There was bass pedals on the ground, but instead of just holding down simple, he would do doom 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 boom doom 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 doom. He'd be doing that. The only thing he didn't do was play drums, and they made an electronic drummer. And weirdly enough, that's kind of what got me interested in playing drums. There was a machine in the early 70s that you could plug into some speakers and plug in the wall, and you could hit a thing that said rumba. And the rumba might go doom 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 doom. It would just be the same beat, or it would be rock 1, rock 2. So it might just be
4 notes.
Yeah, just a straight 4/4 beat.
Yeah.
And then they had salsa, and then you had country, so you could do the waltz.
I can remember those being even on some of those little electric organs.
Yeah, they started implementing those into keyboards.
Yeah, keyboards. Yeah.
So I would. They bought me a drum set when I was, I think, 7, and it was probably like a Toys R Us. I don't know where we got it.
Sure.
Took it home and I destroyed it like in a day, because I just played it. And my dad grinned and laughed like you are, and he goes, "I think we got something here." So we went to.
Well, you know what, and it is a natural talent. It really is. I mean, my grandson Emmett plays with the Jets, or we did play with the Jets, and he's kind of doing some stuff on his own. At 3 years old, he picked up sticks, and his grandfather on the other side was a drummer, and he had that ability. It was in him. He didn't even.
It's a God-given. Yeah,
it's a God-given talent.
And I'm old enough and ornery enough. I've learned that God will take away.
Well,
he'll take it straight away from you.
Yeah.
But I knew as a little kid that I had that rhythm.
Yeah,
I can count, and playing drums is all about counting. It's all about subdivisions. It's usually just 4/4 time. But if once all those pieces fall in place, and you understand what all those pieces mean, then you can be a pretty good drummer. Yeah. To me, it's similar with playing a piano, because once you put all those pieces together, then you're just playing all over the thing. I personally can't play the piano like that. Now, I can play the piano like a drum, where I'm just giving it rhythm. Yeah. Same way I play guitar. It's more like a drum because I'm just rhythm. Right. But I do not understand all the note structure and how everything works as far as scales and flats and when it comes to, I guess, regular instrumentation. Yeah. But for rhythm, I just swallowed that.
Did you take any lessons?
So that was fun. Growing up how I grew up, I was always the stage kid. So I've got grown adults, that are playing drums and playing and steel guitars and playing all the stringed instruments, and so I was always tuned in on that. So every now and again, you could get behind a drum set and play it. And by the time that I thought, and my dad thought, well, maybe he needs some lessons, I was already playing a full drum set. And when you go to lesson mode, they want you to start learning these things called rudiments, which is just 2 sticks and a practice pad. So they want you right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, and get all this. Yeah. Well, imagine how boring that felt to me as a ornery kid that thinks he's already, going to be able to play a full drum set. Right. So it didn't really go very well because I didn't apply myself at all to that. I actually probably rebelled from that and thought, I don't need that. I got this. Sure. Now, what changed the world for me in the music, I went to Reed Junior High, and there was a choir instructor, kind of like RH, right? Just a groovy guy from Marshfield that was he could see talent. And he was a cattle guy, and he was also a operatic choir guy when he wasn't teaching, and he would find himself visiting my dad at the clubs and listening to music. And then he saw me play with Dad, and then it was like, well, wait a minute, what's this little dude doing? Wait a minute. And so he went my first day of high school at Hillcrest, because I sang in his choirs, and we did all the stuff, and we did all the drama stuff, and I didn't really realize that I was kind of turning into a drama kid or a music kid, but I really enjoyed it. And my first day at Hillcrest High School, and I was already pretty ornery. I was an ornery kid, I get called to the office. I'm like, what? I haven't done nothing yet.
First day.
I haven't done anything yet. What have I done? Like I'm trying so hard. Well, what it was is that Charlie Lober, who was the band director, I guess had been told by Mr. Julian, there's going to be a kid coming through, and this kid knows how to play drums probably better than anybody. And they sat me in a room. This is just like the movie Drumline that came out like 20 years later, I think. And they sat me with, his name was Mike Lofton, and he was the senior. And he was just like, okay, well, can you read this music? And I'm like, absolutely not. Well, can you play a beat? Well, yeah, I can play a beat. Mm-hmm. Well, can you, and they put sticks in my hand, and they were like, can you go? Well, yeah. And so I did it. And the next thing you know, we're just flying. Yeah. And Lober, like, okay, yeah. And they changed my schedule. And then I really did dive into all of the nuances of music.
Learning the music. Yeah.
Learning all the stuff about tone versus tuning and timbre and how you attack something and just how to make tone come out of an instrument.
Right.
And then I also got to learn the sheet music side of it, because a drummer just has to learn what the beats are. You don't have to learn what the notes are along with the beats. So it's easier for me, right? Mm-hmm. And they taught, and I learned, and they taught, and I learned, and I absolutely indulged myself.
That's awesome.
I was a tall kid, and I still played basketball at the time for the school, and my freshman year. But at the time, I was 5'8". I was 5'8" as a freshman and sophomore. Mm-hmm. And our point guard, who could handle the ball like a wizard, was 5'8". We had a 6'4" guy, a 6'2" guy, like 6 foot was kind of like the normal. So even though I was always kind of a tall kid, I was getting outgrown by some of these, guys got hair on their legs already, and that kind of thing. Yeah. And I had swallowed up so much of this music that I decided I didn't want to play basketball. Yeah. I say this because I ended up growing 11 inches between my sophomore and junior year. I left 5'8", came back 6'7".
Wow.
And so, but Coach Quinn, he was,
yeah,
come on. I'm like,
Quinn, yeah.
No, but I've already played with Lober for like 2 years now. We did everything, the marching band thing, the pep band for like basketball games,
right? Of
course, the big band for football games, and of course contests and jazz bands, and I just swallowed everything I could swallow. Yeah. And that kind of took me off. And then
that's awesome.
I grew up an 80s kid. So the music in the 80s was all the big hair, guys wearing makeup and earrings, and it was just a crazy, all this crazy, synthesizers come in. Yeah. I mean, synthesizer infiltrated the ZZ Top band even, with the Eliminator album at that time. So all that's coming out and all that pop. MTV started during that time. That's right. So I was just that kid, and I wanted to go be a musician like my dad.
Yeah.
And from after high school, I did. I went and played on the road. I just immediately went and met some guys that actually, weirdly enough, have a connection here in town. Kelly Coster, his mom actually runs that thrift store over there off the square. Yeah, that's Kelly's mom. Yeah, really. And Kelly's he's got one of the largest lighting companies based out of Las Vegas. I mean, huge, like Taylor Swift type
stuff. I had no idea.
That's right here in Marshfield.
I had no idea.
But went on the road, did that. That didn't help me educationally. It did help me with communication, and it made me who I am today. But I took a real, I don't want to say a rough run, because there never was any violence involved.
Yeah.
But a lot of outlaw type decisions, just rock and roll kind of outlaw decisions.
Hey, it happens.
God came in and fixed my wagon though about 1992, and from that point on, I kind of started thinking more about life and family and this, that, and the other. Actually, now we're in the 90s. Ended up meeting my wife, Miss Cottengim here for Marshfield.
Right.
But Sandy, I met her out of Springfield. She was coming into college. And we ended up working in the same environments, and those environments were telecom. My grandma was one of the very first, or she was the very first female pioneer of the Bell telephone system.
Is that right?
In Springfield.
Springfield at the big headquarters
At the one
down
St.
there.
Louis across
Yeah.
from, yes. So she was like the lady, the queen.
Yeah.
Mary Lou Tolliver. And I always loved that. I just thought, and that grandma was the one. And well, I'm a sucker for, well, I loved my grandparents. I love my parents. I have that sentiment.
Yeah.
Sentiment.
Yeah. Family connection.
I'm real sentimental.
Legacy, heritage.
Yeah, I'm kind of an emotional kid, really. And so I wanted to be like grandma. And I did. I ended up going to work for the phone company, worked through all of the, I can remember when we were trying to explain to people what like caller ID and call waiting was.
Oh, wow.
Or what three-way calling was.
That was through deregulation, too, all that, everything.
In 1983. Yeah, in 83, the divestiture happened,
Right.
and then there was a million bell systems. Well, that's when telemarketing came around. And so I started helping, it's an outfit out of Springfield. I started helping, it was Communication Solutions at the time, and now it's CSC, LLC or something.
Yeah.
But Jim Morris, I don't think it's any relation to the fishing guy. Mm-hmm. He was actually a kid out of Lebanon. We just had a blast hiring and doing a lot of telecom work out of Springfield. Well, Sandy came through one of the training classes, and I was, oh my gosh, it was like literally love at first sight.
Right.
And one thing led to another. We probably hung out in Springfield for a while, and of course we're playing in bands and lots of downtown Springfield things. Because my stepdad, my folks got a divorce when I was 15 in 1985, and my stepdad, who is like worldly known, Lou Whitney, had a recording studio. Him and my mom owned the recording studio downtown Springfield at South and Walnut. So if you know Springfield, it's from the barbershop, which is actually a relation to your donut competition, Tony. His brother is the barber at that little corner.
Yeah, up here.
Yeah, and then it goes all the way over to a place called the Outland and all the way up.
St. George.
St. George's people. Yeah. Her kids, because Mama was the one that made the good donuts. Right. Mama made the good donuts. Mama's gone now. She's retired, but that recording studio was down there, so I was still doing lots of promotion work. And even to this, even in my old age, I love promoting. I love putting together something like the Reunion Fest, and putting together these kind of things, or putting together festivals, or being a part of it.
That's good to know. I'm gonna put that in my back pocket.
Do it.
Here.
Because there is an art.
I'm getting older, We need some help on this thing.
That's something that Gary Church said last week. It was we got to start thinking about who we're handing these things off.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Because even though we're young, we like to act like we're 30 sometimes, but the truth is we're not. No. And we're going to have to hand this over, what you've done with your kids, and what I've done with my kids.
Sure.
You end up handing some of it over to them. But
I want to get into you a little bit more, but before we do, back up just a minute. And let's talk about the late 60s, the 70s Springfield music scene with your dad, and then you mentioned Lou Whitney. Yeah. And just give us a 5-minute.
Okay, so I was
talk about the places that because you didn't have downtown like it is now.
Oh, no.
You had the townhouse, you had all these little venues around. Let's talk about that for a minute.
So I was born in 1970, so what I do know, a lot of it is because of what I was told or what pictures I've seen.
Sure.
Some of it I do remember, because once you're 8, 9, 10, you're really starting to remember things.
Yeah, I can tell you.
You learn a lot
from that era.
I think you learn a lot 0 to 5, but you start observing a lot more and making bad decisions. So in the 70s, there wasn't a lot. There wasn't. Like today, there's 10 or 12 cover bands that cover all different variety of music. We didn't have that.
Right.
Even up into the 80s, like when we're going to end up getting there, but in the early 70s, it was still that hotel motel type circuit. And I think that's why we left the Springfield area, is because in Springfield, you had one, but you can't play it every week.
Right.
And you had to be on that tour.
You really had the townhouse. It was
you had the townhouse. Big. You had Ramones. You had Top Rail.
Yep.
And so Ramones was where you could go get your butt kicked. It was real rough. Mm-hmm. Even though it's Southside Town, which is kind of like the opposite of normal. Right. And then the townhouse.
Right.
Now Donna, she ran that thing just right. Mm-hmm. She was a lady, a good businesswoman, and and then she ended up finding the Lefty Brothers, so Tracy and Kerry Cole. And then, of course, that's going to bring in drummers like Pete Generous and Lloyd Hicks and just other people.
Right. And then about mid-'70s, about 76, about the time the disco era and the urban cowboy era, both at the same time, well, that's when I came of age. I graduated in 77 from Marshfield. And, of course, you had South Fork, you had Wicker Works, you had Merlin's, all those places.
Yeah.
Then it starts
getting a little sparkly.
Started changing.
A little more sparkly.
Yeah.
Things
and the younger
lights are moving a little more.
Younger generations getting a little more involved, and they're getting out and about in the college, that type of thing. Where before it was more, a little bit older adults and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, because once you've hit those 80s, because that 80s or that late 70s was the disco era. You're right. And that brought in like things like roller skating, arcades, all the things that we play with still today.
That's right.
And I'm going to jump back real quick.
Yeah, you go ahead.
In the 60s, what I remember being told about the 60s, if you got to think about music, one of the things you've got to really think about was there was a thing about like if you had your hair too long, like you are not, even with your haircut, my haircut for sure now.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Right.
We won't have none of this. I remember my dad telling me that in the 60s, I think it was 64 or 5 or something like that, they would not let him walk, the graduation walk, would not let him walk because they said his hair was just a little too long. And his hair wasn't as long as yours.
Right.
But it was over the ear, and I mean, we don't need none of this crazy Beatles stuff or the Rolling Stones stuff or any of this.
Not until not until Vietnam was over. As soon as Vietnam, when the country turned on the Vietnam establishment.
Yes.
1972 or 3 is when in this high school it all changed.
Yeah.
The women all of a sudden didn't have to wear dresses; they could wear pants. The men could wear longer hair. The whole style changed. And you go back in these yearbooks and you can see exactly
by the pictures. Yeah. And so that actually probably pushed down, suppressed, limited people that are artistic that are musicians. Because we don't need none of that crazy stuff.
Didn't have the East or West Coast influence.
Don't be shaking your hips, Elvis. That kind of thing. But now we'll go a couple blocks forward. You're right. Now we've got the 80s, and we're not battling, but you've got pop music that becomes really popular. When Duran Duran or even George Michael or just that kind of pop thing was happening, and then of course there was this. Rock and roll thing happening, Kiss has got makeup on, all the metal, big hair, lots of, where girls and boys used Aquanet. Everybody used Aquanet. It was they all used the Aquanet glue.
Absolutely.
But in the Springfield era, in the 80s, there were, in the 70s and 80s, the Safari Lounge, that was a neat one, owned by Doug Roselle. And like I said, the Wooden Nickel, that was another one that I don't think you mentioned yet. There was the Minor Attraction. That was one that a lot of people didn't know about.
What was the one underneath the bowling alley on Battlefield?
The Bottom Line.
That's where I saw the Daredevils.
Yeah.
In about 76 maybe or 75. They were playing, they were home for the weekend or something, and they kind of just had kind of a local deal, and some of us just stumbled into that deal.
That's where that bowling alley is still now, right? Well, and I remember we
was underneath.
Yeah, we went to Sandy and I and the kids did. We went to a private party for a birthday or something. And they start walking us down there, and I was like deja vu. I was like, "This is the Bottom Line." And my wife was like, "What are you talking about?"
Have they kept
it? They've completely remodeled it. But you go down in, and now it's a bunch of party rooms.
I see. For kids. It would be cool if they.
It was just weird walking down the steps because you had to walk down the steps to get to the Bottom Line. But all that happened. There was once music kind of came out, we get past that 70s thing, and now you've basically got. They would have called it hippie music. You've got all this free-spirited hippie kind of music. Right. You've got full-blown country and western music, and then you got rock and roll music. At least in this neck of the woods. One thing you did not have around here was soul music. I mean, everybody knows who James Brown is.
Right.
But, Little Richard and James Brown, and to be blunt, black folk.
We weren't urban enough.
No. Right. Well, my dad, being the musician, he just oh my golly, it was like that. So we're listening to blues guys like Albert King, Freddie King, Jimmy Reed. Albert, Freddie, and BB were the three kings.
Right.
I always liked Freddie, but that kind of music would get infiltrated in, and so in my life, my dad started a thing called Blue Monday, and it was on Commercial Street at the Buffalo Bar, and he was bringing in more soul and blues and crying blues. Country's crying white guy stuff, and blues is crying black guy stuff.
Yeah.
And so that really
no steel guitar in the black stuff,
no cowboy hats at that time.
Right,
at that time.
Right, yeah.
And so here we go. He did Blue Monday through the '80s a lot. That's in the '80s really is when I started kind of gluing into the local thing of these are the Daredevils. Okay, that's the Lefty Brothers.
Yeah.
That's the Rockin' because that was the Ramones house band.
Right.
And then the Self family, which is really connected to Springfield. They were some of them, I believe, that had the townhouse.
Yeah, Vicky was
No, the Top Rail.
Vicky was singing her all around Springfield, by the late 70s, early 80s.
And Vicky, her album One Good Woman, that was actually my dad's song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad wrote One Good Woman.
Really?
That was recorded at our recording studio. I guess I didn't even talk about the recording studio.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman by the name of Jim Martin in the 70s, late 70s, that started a recording studio called Column One out of Springfield. And what I remember the story being was he was married to an heir of 7-Up. 7-Up, the drink. Mm-hmm. So they're living on the south side of Springfield and had enough money to do whatever you want. And at that time, he wanted to build a recording studio. And he built a recording studio. And then probably his biggest claim to fame as far as making somebody go forward was Boxcar Willie.
Yeah.
Because Boxcar Willie used to just be literally kind of like a hobo.
Yeah.
I remember him eating breakfast at our breakfast table one time, and I'm like, who is this fella? But he'd, and he'd pick up and ding-a-ding-a-ding. And that happened a lot, though, honestly, when people come to the house. And,
I bet. I can't
which
imagine.
one's this one?
Yeah. Saturday morning or Sunday morning.
Oh, yes.
After a late night.
Or just for writing sessions.
Oh,
that was a really neat deal, the writing sessions. Dad would write with like Alan Ross, and on the road it was with Guy Workman. But when the very first time I met Alan Ross, and Alan, it just scared me to death because he was such a eccentric. He carried such an energy. He was really, really, really polite. It was just a really different kind of thing. And I remember the doorbell rang, and I ran to the door, and I opened the door, and I'm little,
Yeah.
Oh my God! And he's standing there with a guitar. I was like, I haven't seen this one before. I wonder who this guy is. But my dad ended up writing a lot with him.
What would be the biggest song that your dad, the one that has been the biggest hit that your dad?
Well, that's the Number One Lovin' Man. Number One Lovin' Man was a song Dad wrote. Jerry Lee Lewis picked it up and put it on an album. So that was huge. That was a huge deal. Yeah. So when the Killer, because they called him the Killer, and at the time, because we just mentioned those other kind of music, so there's always going to be gospel music in that mix too, hardcore gospel music, because there just was. Yeah. Well, Jimmy Swaggart and Mickey Gilley and Jerry Lee, and like somehow they're all
first cousins.
Yeah, they're cousins.
Yeah, they are.
So here you got the
like
wild
first cousins.
Yes, you got the wild man Jerry Lee. And then you've got Calmer, and then even more calm. The crazy one picked up Dad's song and put it on a record, and I think it was his last album with Elektra, Jerry's, and it was in the 80s, 70s or 80s.
So did your dad, when he started, was he early enough to be around the Ozark Jubilee and all those?
Oh yeah, I played in there even.
You did?
As a little kid, yeah. Towards the end,
Yeah.
The black and white version,
the Red Foley.
Yeah, the black and white TV version. No, he was.
I didn't know when he actually kind of started.
So what I hear is like in the '60s, everybody used to go to Rockaway Beach.
Yeah,
you'd go to Rockaway Beach, or in Springfield there was a place called Fred Shindig's, or the High Boy, which might have been the same place. But there was 2 or 3 different places that young kids could go get their Buddy Holly in, and they could go get their. My dad, Another crazy story.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's band from Springfield was called...
an hour's not going to be long enough, you know that.
Maybe not. I might have to come back. Dad's band was called the Raiders.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, from overseas, comes Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Oh, my dad was so mad. He was so mad. Because it'd be like if all of a sudden, your name was Chris Stapleton.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
the
real Chris Stapleton shows up.
Yeah.
And you're like, dang it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I could... we've lived a lot of life as far as in the music world.
That's really interesting.
It's been a lot of fun.
You may have as much knowledge as anybody around because of your dad and growing up the way you did. I mean, there'd be a lot of people still connected, but as far as a child that lived that life and traveled and the whole deal, you may be in a pretty unique spot
I think
people in Springfield.
I think it's was it Justin Bertoldi?
Justin, yeah,
plays fiddle with.
Yeah.
He might have me beat.
Well, he would from this era, but I'm talking about going back to the old Springfield scene. That's what I mean.
Well, that's because I'm
the connections to old Springfield.
I'm only 55, but I don't remember anything else.
Right.
Like I don't remember anything else except music.
Yeah.
And watching all these music things happen, watching venues come and go, watch gigantic festivals come and go.
Mm-hmm. The reason I say that, like Benny Mahan, Lou Whitney, your dad, those guys are gone. I mean, they're not around anymore to tell the stories, but you could still relate to some of that. That's what I was trying to get at.
Well, and I try to teach or set a path that's solid, like if I do see people, so like the young guys, the Jets, let's just use them for an example. And I don't know any of them, but if you see a young group like that and they're motivated and they're doing their things, just to be able to drop a nugget here and there about what might help.
Right.
You try. Now, it's hard because you can't teach people things until maybe the second or third attempt.
Right.
But I really think that's one of my favorite things to do is to share my mistakes, but on the good end. Like hey, if we do that might not work.
Too. That's part of your faith.
Oh, I love it.
That's part of your faith.
I love that.
That's part of.
I do want to mention that. I do want to mention that.
Man.
I don't know how many years we're going to sit here, but
just 30 minutes. We're good.
So let's do the faith thing. I obviously, with all these stories I just told, I obviously was not brought up in church. And to me, church are a bunch of people that show up in a building at the same time to uplift each other's lives.
That's right.
I was brought up in a van. Not a van down by the river like a homeless kid, but I was brought up in a van that was connected to a trailer that had a big wheel tied to the front of it and a Schwinn bicycle. And we went from place to place to place to place. And so the team was small. And then once we settled down, because like I said, come 5th grade, now we're in Springfield, and we're getting ready to go through the end of elementary, and we're doing junior high, and we're doing high school, and now we're able to make some friendships that are going to last a little bit longer. And I'd start going to church with other kids. And, of course, my folks, they'd let me. They didn't want to go, but, yeah, you go ahead. That sounds fun. They probably were like, go ahead, get on the bus and leave me alone for a while. And I've always told in my testimony of my faith, I'm not that guy that can say, oh, I was 6 years old and I was in a red-floored building, and on this day, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. Because as a kid, I knew I had a relationship with God. And I knew that every single time that a preacher would do that same sermon, now with your eyes closed and heads bowed, if you want to, give your heart to the Lord, raise your hand, and then repeat this prayer after me. Oh, I did it every time. Yeah. Every time. Yeah. Because I'm like, that's my team. Yeah. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And then I kind of mentioned that 92 kind of changed my whole world around, and it did. I'd gotten in a little trouble. And God slowed me down. And then I started going to an all-black Baptist church in Springfield called Washington Avenue Baptist Church. And that's where I did get baptized. That's where I did marry my wife from this part of the woods right here. Yeah. So that was a fun day to take all those people to Washington Avenue Baptist Church and marry their beautiful daughter.
Well, let's move into that chapter. Let's talk about your wife and your children and a little bit about how life changed then.
It absolutely changed.
Yeah.
And the music side, I just started playing music with actually still all the big guys.
Yeah.
But some of the the Vic Vaughns and the Bud Johnsons and the Smitties and all these like guys that really played. I learned so much sitting there watching them play. Luckily enough, I could play the drums and I could just be back there beating the beats. They're the ones doing all the melody. So we did that for a while, and I moved to Niangua, Missouri. And actually, I was living in Daytona Beach, Florida, and then finally, Sandy and I decided, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's just do this. And so we did. We moved to Niangua, and that was wild to me because I've been going so fast and so hard. And in Niangua, I mean, all the places I've lived in, there's sirens and honking and trucks and loud and helicopters and just nuts. Man, you move to Niangua, and if you hear a siren, you call your grandma to make sure she's okay.
Yeah.
Everything was okay. I hear they're coming.
Yeah.
And so it was really great. God just stripped me down. Yeah. And Sandy used to go to First Baptist Marshfield. Barth,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Used to be Sandy's.
Right. Youth leader.
Youth leader.
Yeah, my brother.
Your brother was my wife's youth leader.
Right.
And so we're going to go back to First Baptist Marshfield. And at first, I was in a shock again going there because I left in all black, and I mean 2-3 hour sermons, lots of hooping and hollering,
they
lots
were
of
praising
singing.
and waving before it was
just
cool
like the Blues
praising,
Brothers
right?
movie,
Yeah.
the movie The
Yeah.
Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
And it was real, and they were doing it. And I'm back there, just having fun with them. But we're going to raise this family. We're going to get things together. Yeah. I'm still working at the phone company now, probably 10 years in or more. Uh-huh. Washington Avenue, walked in there, and God really, really, I will say, helped me, introduced me to a lot of neat people. Of course, Derwin Kicker was my preacher the whole time.
Yeah.
And there was a few music directors there. And some was really neat was like some of the old music directors that used to direct music there, they still went there.
Yeah.
So there was really neat there. I remember there was a time, because I'm tattooed up and all this stuff, and I remember I'd wear sleeves in today's weather, scared to death, because I just didn't want to probably be judged or whatever too harshly. And I'll tell you what, those people at first, they'd pull me aside and they'd go, "Son, look at this."
Yeah.
And there'd be some blob of black that you never see, and they're like, "Marine,
Mom,
blah blah blah."
Mom from the
yes,
World War II. Mom,
yes,
Mom,
yes,
yeah.
like whatever.
Hey,
yes,
those guys earned whatever they wanted. They
right. And so like, don't sweat that.
Yeah,
They'd give me Bible verses and say, "Keep your head up."
Yeah.
And so then I got to start playing music here in town a little bit with in that organization, and probably the most fun I ever had there was like helping with VBS, or the most fun was the Upwards basketball thing.
Yeah.
And Becca Hungerford had ran that thing the whole time.
Right.
And then I got in there. Well, and that's where this promotion thing came into light for me, because I thought what we ought to do is we ought to build like a rock concert for these little dudes that want to play basketball. And, she's got the entire outline of what we're going to do. And all I wanted to do was like put some music in between them coming out, some music while they're warming up, and kind of give them more of a professional, run them through a tunnel, get them, get some lights going or something, just to have, make those little dudes feel like rock stars. That's what I wanted to do. And because it's it's not about basketball. Upwards is not about basketball. It's about devotion, and it's about learning about Christ and having a deeper relationship of however you're going to end up handling that relationship. So I went to church there for, I want to say, almost 20 years. And then I switched churches about 6 years ago through something bad happened here in our community, and I went to a funeral. And then from that funeral day, I walked in that building, and there was just too many things that happened in a row that I knew, or I felt like, I really felt like the devil didn't want me there. And I thought, good, then I'm coming here every day. Bang, here we go. And honestly, Derwin had already passed away. Me and Kim Kicker had already hugged out so many times. Kyle Kicker, Anna Kicker, all those are the kids that grew up with my son Isaiah here in town. So we're down the road now. Every Sunday, I help lead worship. We've got a great team of people. Actually, Tracy Cole from the Lefty Brothers plays guitar with me every Sunday morning. And Keith Whitworth out of Springfield, and Cheryl Moreland, she's stepped up and plays piano, and James Mitchell, he's like a real life superhero, and a whole bunch of girls that just sing like angels. And we get together, and Gary Dedman does the talking, and we do some singing, and that church is about relationship, not so much about religion. Just because the building has to have, they are a Baptist church, but in my soul, I feel more that it's not about this structured, rigid, religious thing. Because like even in the Bible, some of those religious people had it sideways,
Pharisees,
right? They had it This is a church about having a relationship with a God that you don't understand.
And that's the trend in a lot of churches today. I mean, a lot of getting away from the old mainline traditional ways of worship, and that's why they're pulling more people in today and bringing Jesus back into the communities a little bit more than what maybe he had been for a while. He's always there, but we didn't pay him enough attention for a while.
I think supporting anyone having a relationship with God, just supporting that alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you do you, because it's just
Well, look at the freeway ministry and the restoration ministries and all these ministries that are helping people that didn't have a clue and didn't have a chance in life, and they're converting people every week, and it's a great way to worship. It's a great
Freeway's so close to my heart, and John Stroop and the whole bunch. Because I told you I got in trouble in '92. It was that kind of trouble. And and Lou Whitney came to me. I was 22 years old, and I am at the lowest point. I mean, I have screwed up, man. I have screwed up. I've made some bad decisions. He looked at me and he said, it took you 22 years to screw this up, and it might take you 22 years to fix it. And he was there for me the whole time. Weirdly enough, he passed away when I was 44. And my relationship with God is
22 and 22.
And
Lou, we didn't mention, but he was your stepdad.
For like 25 plus years. He was my daughter's grandpa. He was my stepdad. And that was a neat thing, because he's a king as far as music industry. But he never was that guy. He was the most humble human. I learned more about him after he died than I knew of him while he was alive. And he came to Springfield in '72. I was 2 years old. I've got pictures of him, my real dad, and my mom and I walking down the street.
And for those that don't know, Lou was a musician, kind of an iconic musician in the Springfield community.
And he was a producer and engineer. He did a lot of recording. Little stories. It wasn't uncommon for like the company Jack Daniels, the liquor company, to call up Lou and go, "Hey, we've got a commercial shoot we need you to be involved in." And he'd run off for 3 days and go do a commercial. Or if James Brown, the soul guy, the godfather of soul, when his estate, while he's alive, calls up and says, "I need you I need you to transfer all my analog tape. So reel to reel tape. I need you to transfer all that to digital. You're going to come down to Augusta, Georgia. We're going to put you in a guest house, and I need you to do this for us." He never met James because it's such a big deal. He'd go do that.
That's awesome.
And it goes into today. We mentioned Stapleton, but Chris Stapleton's one of his recording engineers is Vance Powell, and Vance Powell was an intern under Lou. Vance was just a cat out of Carthage, and he learned from Lou and took it on into today's world. It's fun because we watch the Grammys or we watch the award shows, the CMTs, and there's Vance accepting an award with Chris. And it's like, wow.
There's a lot of Springfield connections, isn't there? When you look
they
back.
made a documentary, a movie called The Center of Nowhere, and it's a good one. Now, of course, you can't say it all because there is so much rich in nature of every kind of music, from bluegrass to blues to country to rock to modern or pop, or even scratching and hip hop, and because there's guys coming out of Springfield from way back in the day. Danny Phillips, DJP, he went on one of those little MTV kind of shows and won the Master of the Mix, and he's just a cat from Springfield. But we used to go to Showbiz Pizza and pretend we could dance and and eat pizza.
Well, the book that Wayne Glenn did, The Greatest Hits of the Ozarks, fantastic book, going all the way back to, fiddle music and hillbilly music and what was that old?
So you read that one, and
Love Grant, the godmother of the sound back then. I forget her name anyway. Some old gal, but I mean, and then you connect the ties with Cy Simon and Randall Channing married his daughter and Randall's a daredevil.
Yes,
there's just it's a spider.
And the Self guy, writes "I'm sorry."
Yeah,
and it becomes a Charmin commercial that we were stapled with all through the 70s and 80s.
Who was the writer that went to Nashville that always on my mind? Whatever his name. He was a
Springfield deal.
Springfield.
And then you could take that whole history thing and then go read Ernie Bedell's book, where it's all the Bedell guys. And that's where I got my first drum set. Was at the Drum Key, and that was a Bedell thing.
The black family.
All the Bedells and all their, they've got traveling gospel stories just as much as like the Kittlemans did. Yeah. So, and then there's the Kittlemans, and that whole thing. There's so much. Porter was for Close. He was from Close.
Right. Well, it is interesting. It's really interesting.
There was a lot of stuff there, and grew up in there. So now for the last 20 years, though, I've lived in Marshfield.
Yeah.
And
so talk about your kids.
Okay. They're all grown up now, so that's fun. But we did come to Marshfield so our kids would be able to be raised in a school environment that I guess at the time we thought was the best we could put them in, and that was Marshfield.
Yeah.
Now we were imports, we're new here, and that 20 years ago is a little different than guys coming in today. But my wife is a school teacher. She's taught at the junior high for 16, 17 years.
She went to Marshfield School, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. She was a She went to where we're at today. This building.
I was gonna say she probably went. Did she go all 12 years Marshfield?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And then went off to
and her
SMS.
mother I believe, went to this building. Because I know, of course, her aunts and uncles did. Because our Bill Lloyd, of course, I know Bill real well, and he graduated from this building.
He's fun.
Yeah.
Bill's fun.
Yeah.
Last time we saw him and Graham. And me and Isaiah were playing golf down up there by his place. But just a great family.
Yeah.
Well, so we raised our kids here. Kayla's I have two boys from what I say a previous life beforehand. And my son Seth, he has always lived away. He's lived in Hawaii. He's lived in Los Angeles. He lives in Brooklyn now. But we acquired Isaiah when he was 7 years old when we lived in Niangua. And honestly, we wanted Isaiah to be able to go to a junior high. And maybe start fresh in junior high, and then our girls were young enough, and so we put all three of the kids that lived with us here in town through the school, and thanks to the Marshfield school system, we had a chance to have it's pretty good raising of the kids.
Absolutely.
And then they could also play whatever sports they wanted, and that's what Sandy and I went to. A million ball games. It's just like raise your kids around sports, keep them super busy. If they weren't swimming, they were running. If they weren't running, they were volleyballing. Right. If they weren't volleyballing, they were basketballing. If they weren't basketballing, they were doing homework.
You got some talented kids too.
They were fun. Yeah. It was fun to watch. Kayla's coaching. She coached around here. She's actually going to be coaching in another district starting next year and teaching. So my oldest daughter, she's got all of her educational stuff. She's moved on. She's going to go start teaching, actually in Republic, Missouri. And then Bailey, she's my youngest daughter. She's 21, and she has just completed physical therapy assistant school, planning on being a traveling nurse. She doesn't have a boyfriend that she's head over heels with right now. She doesn't have kids. So she can go and do a traveling thing. Yeah. And these kids have had this. They all know what physical therapy is because they've all blown something out along the way.
Yeah.
And so they've done real good. My son Isaiah, he moved away from here, and he's had his struggles, but he's got a solid job working in the trucking industry.
Good.
And they're doing really, really good. Yeah. Sandy, it's summertime Sandy right now because as a teacher, it's a switch, And but golly, she never stops learning either. She is right now working on her second master's.
Wow.
She has a passion right now. She's always had a passion to teach kids and to love on kids, but now she wants to help kids that might have a harder time comprehending reading.
Yeah.
And comprehending words. So whether that's dyslexia, whether that's just language barrier stuff,
Sure.
she really wants to help kids understand what they're being presented with, and so she just keeps going. She's a rock star. If it wasn't for her, I'd probably be dead in a ditch. Because
a lot of us could
one
say
good
that,
woman, any good man probably needs to
Yeah.
admit that it took a good woman
no question
to
about
keep them
that.
in line.
So let's talk a little bit more about your music today and Papa Green Shoes and what you guys are doing, where you're playing. What do you see in the future? And of course, a week from tonight,
Yeah.
you'll be here for Union Fest. And by the
Is
way,
this when you want your lunch?
my lunch?
Yeah, this
Sure.
is a good time to
Oh,
give you
sure,
your lunch.
sure.
Okay, so I come bearing gifts.
Oh my goodness gracious! I should be giving you a gift.
No,
Oh.
this is for you.
Oh my goodness!
This is a PGS shirt.
Awesome. Cool.
So these are representations of all of us, and then obviously there, so you can have
that's
that
awesome. Thank you.
one. It is
I will wear
summertime,
that, yeah.
so summertime.
Got a
You
little
put your water
cooler.
in
There we
there.
go. Yeah. That's great.
And for all the kids involved, all the kids got to have cool wristbands,
Yeah.
got to have stickers.
Man.
And then what have we been doing lately? This is our most recent recording project.
Okay. Yeah.
This is our fourth recording project. This is Papa Green Shoes live from the Riff in Springfield. You can have that too. I know CDs
Jody,
are kind
thank
of
you.
they're a dying.
Appreciate it.
That's a dying
No,
media form.
I'm still sort of old school though.
So what we've done, Papa Green Shoes is a band that's the current lineup right now. This year we're getting ready to do our 10-year anniversary. You got that in there? There you go. This year we're going to be celebrating 10 years with the lineup that we have. It is probably my favorite band ever, and that even probably is including the Cottengim band. Me, Dad, and Stoney. Just because. I mean, Stoney and I tell each other all the time, man, Dad didn't get to see this. He didn't get to see us really, really kill it.
Right.
Because what we do is we play music that, we're entertainers. I'm here to play and sing, and it's completely different. It's completely worldly, but it's like get out, hear some good music, and leave your worries alone for a minute and have fun. And we don't do the 9 to 1 bar warrior thing,
Right.
Or 8 to 12, and you're not going to really catch us at clubs like the ones we've talked about.
Yeah.
You're not going to catch us in the current clubs in Springfield like that.
Right.
But you will catch us maybe in a venue that from 7 to 9, on a Friday, Saturday, or a Thursday.
Right.
You can get out and you can go see some music and maybe have some food. And if you need a cocktail, have a cocktail. If you need coffee or water, do that too.
Right.
But we want to give you good music.
Right.
And this band is, all four of us sing and sing pretty well. Dean Daisy plays the bass. He's a guy out of Bolivar. I play drums and sing. My brother Stoney plays harmonica and guitar and slide guitar and sings. And then we call him our Superman, but his name's Casey Cavanaugh. He's from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He grew up in the same town Prince grew up in. He's got crazy connections and stories, but
Really?
he plays keyboard and sax and sings like an angel. So we put together more of a just good music band, like old times, good times, that kind of thing. And we just want people to be able to grin, and even if they don't dance, I need them tapping their foot or moving their neck a little bit and smiling. And
You are entertainers. You guys, you actually encourage that, and you're not just sitting there playing a 70s classic rock song. You're actually getting people to
we're moving and grooving
to get with the music and participate.
It's not the neat thing too. It's not fake.
Right.
I'm not putting on a wig and pretending that I'm some '80s band for 1 million people at a fireworks festival.
Right. Although your drum set is kind of unique, isn't it?
Well, that was cool. I've had lots of drums in my life. Sandy probably thinks I still have too many right now. But no, that you're talking about the Drake.
Yeah.
Being a bicycle kid, we turned a 3-speed, 3-wheel bike into a drum set I can ride.
It's really cool.
But Papa Green Shoes, now we do festivals. A lot of festivals, a lot of bigger events, private parties. We're expensive.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to go play for $50. I'm not going to go play for $100 a man. Right. That's not it. We come in as professional as possible.
Yep.
We have merchandise table. We have plenty of stuff to take home. We always say, take us home with you.
Right.
I really encourage young people that like music. I mean, I'm giving drumsticks away all the time, and just like, don't get in trouble, mind your parents, but keep listening to good music.
Right.
And we probably play once or twice a month throughout the summertime now. But we play. I don't want to sound horrible, but we do what we want.
Yeah, kind of pick and choose.
Yeah, kind of pick. And like, so we should come around this upcoming Saturday when we do the reunion fest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was something that was like, well, yeah, let's do that. Yeah. And I think I even told you, like, well, I didn't go to school here,
right.
But you've lived here forever.
It doesn't matter your wife.
And my wife's here,
and we encourage it. That's why
I've lived here.
Yep.
And so that kind of thing, yes, I'll bring my band into here. It might not be for everybody, because it might not, but we're going to give you everything we got.
Yeah, and you're going to entertain us. And
90 minutes worth of a lot of fun.
That's right. And the thing that I like to remind people, we are having a class reunion, so to speak. I mean, so it's not all about just being a concert.
Well, it's reunion and festival.
It's both. It's both. But I mean, there'll be a group that'll be back there visiting and reminisce about the old days. They want music playing, but they're not really studying and listening to the music intently. But then you'll have those that are up around the band and that they really want to sit and listen.
Yeah.
And those may be some that aren't necessarily alumni, which is great. We encourage that. We want people that didn't necessarily graduate from Marshfield to attend this.
Right.
It's an all-class, all-adult reunion.
Right.
And we've got people that have lived here nearly all their life, or except maybe they didn't actually go to school here, but they married someone or they moved here right after, and they're connected to people more than some that went to 12 years of school and then moved off and never lived here again. So
it's not as rigid.
Yeah,
it's not as rigid as, like you said, just a reunion.
No, it's not.
This is a reunion fest.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, I mean, you run it, but from what I've seen over the years it's a reunion and a festival.
Right.
Well, every festival needs an excuse to be a festival.
That's right.
And so the reunion of loved ones from our community is the excuse. And then when you can sprinkle in some of the talent you've brought in before, I mean, we've had local talent. We've had this year, the closing act's going to be incredible. Yeah. That's a whole new break.
Yeah, and she's kind of new to our group. Yeah. But I think people will enjoy her, Heather White and the Little White Lies.
That's Steve Graham and Heather, and then the local guy,
Tom Robinson.
Tom. And so to put all those things together for this kind of festival thing is amazing.
Yeah, well, and we appreciate
thank you for inviting us.
Well, we appreciate it, and I will tell you, you're helping us with this because we can't pay the big bucks, but we want to keep the prices, where everybody can afford it, and we have, and because you guys are gracious enough to help us, and we still pay you, but you may not make quite as much as you would somewhere, but we appreciate that, and we know you're doing it to help our cause here.
And this is another thing about the band. There's a lot of bands out there that do it because they have to. Yeah. So they do eat that $50 a night.
Right.
Again, we do things because we want to.
Yeah.
We do the things we want to do.
Absolutely.
And so pretty much we're just It's like when the Sertoma Club out of Springfield says, "Come do something." Yeah. Yeah. Whatever. Or when you get the chance to maybe be a part of the Aaron Sachs 66 Festival.
Right.
When the Gilloys calls, or hey, do this. Right. Do that.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the 66 Festival because, next year is the 100th anniversary of Route 66, if you haven't heard. I'm on the state commission for that. I was appointed by the Governor Parson, and it's been a great time. We're planning a big year for things that are going to be happening on the old road, and one of those things will be the big kickoff event in Springfield on April. It's going to be a 3-day event, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about it, but it's it should be a really wonderful celebration all throughout the year next year. And, of course, all the towns along the road, there's only 10 counties, actually, in Missouri that has Route 66. And within that, there's probably maybe only 20 cities of any size that are on that. So we're in a very unique club.
Yeah.
Now, if you get up around closer to St. Louis, there's a lot going on. But once you get out of St. Louis County, there's not that many communities. Right. So we're going to be fortunate here in Marshfield with our 4th of July parade and with Reunion Fest or whatever else we put together to tie this all together to help celebrate the 100-year anniversary, which it also happens to be the 250th birthday of our nation. Remember the bicentennial?
Yes.
In 76?
1776.
Well, it's been 50 years since that, so it's the 250th. So that's going to be tied in with it. And there's a committee here in Marshfield. We're planning these events right now as we speak, so it'll be fun.
I told you I love promotions. So.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that makes my brain go, let's go.
Don't let your phone die. So
I won't.
Jody, I told everyone this would be a really fun hour, and it has.
Well, we scratched the surface.
I know it, and it's went by really fast. But it is getting. We got 1 minute left, and I really appreciate you coming in.
Lyndall, thank you
I'll
for
wear your
inviting me.
T-shirt with pride.
It's
and,
black, so
yeah.
wait till winter or something.
Yeah. Oh no, it's all right. So.
Thank you again for inviting us, and
Yeah.
to the people, come see our
bet.
band on Saturday.
Come and see us next Saturday.
Keep supporting Lyndall in this old school times, and
we're just trying to keep history alive for the future generations. That's what we're trying to do with this. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you very much.
Yeah. See ya. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. We're going to have a show next week. Not sure exactly who yet, but it'll be Reunion Fest Day, and there'll be a lot of people around. We'll pull in here and sit down and visit with. So.
Oh, you'll be able to just drag them off the street.
That's right.
That'll be fun. That sounds real fun.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead. Hit the magic button.
Yeah. Let me shut this off before we critique ourselves.
Keep supporting Lyndall and keep supporting good music. Mind your parents. Do all